Hello, welcome back to C Story Corner. Let's return to my youth romantic comedy As Wrong As I Expected, Book 4 this time. As a reminder, I'm reviewing the book, not the anime. This book was one I looked forward to getting to read from the first time I saw the anime. All I could think was, how much of this story am I missing? And I was in no ways disappointed. Unlike the previous three, this one was written with a solid and fully stated theme, along with the additional theme of powerlessness. There's a quote by Natsume Sasuke, a rather prominent Japanese writer. This quote is used before the book begins, halfway through, and again near the end. And I really like it. Quote, "Nobody in this world fits the classic mold of the villain. Normally everyone is good, or at least ordinary. But in the right circumstances, they may change suddenly, and this is what makes them so frightening." What a wonderful description of humanity. It fits quite well. And Wataru-san uses this concept to beautifully illustrate the themes of getting along with others and feeling powerless. In Book 4, Hachiman tries unsuccessfully to be lazy and do absolutely nothing for his summer break. Thanks to Hirosuke-sensei, and being betrayed by his sister Komachi, he instead gets dragged into being a youth camp counselor for an elementary school's summer campout. Right along with Yukino, Yui, Komachi, Saika, yay, one positive, right? As well as the popular queen and king, Miura and Hayama, and two other members of their clique, a fujoshi named Ibina Hina, and a jock named Tobi Kakuro. What a crowd. Exactly what Hachiman and Yukino love, right? Well, at least Hachiman gets to enjoy some time with Saika, the cutie pie. Anyway, when they arrive at the campsite, they notice a young girl named Surumirumi being ostracized by the rest of the kids. Hayama, in his attempt to make her part of the crowd, only makes things worse, and also highlights an unpleasant truth to our little popular group. Thing is, it's not just Hayama who's bothered by this. So is Yui, who brings up her concern about the girl and asks what they can do to help. Hirosuke-sensei declares this a service club activity, which sparks Yukino to go all in, and Hachiman to do more than just leave a loner alone. The group try discussing things they could do to help Rumi's situation, but it doesn't go very far due to a fundamental misunderstanding on the part of pretty much all of them. Later, while Hachiman's alone, when everyone's playing in the water, Rumi wanders by, sees him, and sits down. It's during this scene that Rumi speaks openly enough to light a fire under Hachiman to do something. She describes the situation, how it makes her feel, and how she wouldn't be able to go back to how things were, even if everything stopped. This seems to really get to Hachiman, who asks, "It sucks to feel pathetic," and then leaves without explanation. He comes up with a plan, and even though he knows it's a terrible plan, in more than one sense of the word, and that it won't actually get Rumi back in with her peers, it's what they can do in the time they have, and if all goes well, it'll at least change the situation enough for Rumi to not be beat down. Nobody likes the idea, and it leaves Hayama with an impression of our protagonist I can't wait to be more fully explored. But they go with it anyway, convinced it's the best they got. The plan involves Hayama and his gaggle of populars to pretty much terrorize the main group of girls ostracizing Rumi, thereby exposing them and their malice and their general suckiness to the group, effectively tearing the group apart by destroying their trust in each other and their relationships. Kinda harsh for a bunch of elementary schoolers, but, well, from my own life experiences, elementary school-age kids do worse than that to each other on a daily basis. So, yeah. The plan succeeds, but it leaves a bitter taste in everyone's mouth, and no one's happy. But in the end, all they can do is pray and leave it in Rumi's hands. There was one silver lining that gives them hope, though. During the setup, while the girls were put in the situation to betray each other, Rumi takes a stand. She blinds the popular kids and drags the girls away to safety. Just not before they've shown their true natures to each other. At the very least, our teen players can look at this brave act and believe that, even if the girls' relationships were all fake, at least Rumi's feelings toward them weren't. So, how does that quote by Natsume Sasuke apply? Well, this book, and so far series, explores the idea that anyone can change under the right circumstances, both good and bad. Rumi was a good, wonderful friend, but under the pressure from the other kids, ostracized, the one chosen to be excluded, until her time came. The main group of girls behind it were pretty solid and tight, until they were put in a situation where they could step forward and take responsibility for their wrongdoing, or throw each other under the bus. Hachiman was given the opportunity to enact change, and went about it in a terrible way that could have gotten them all in trouble. And the popular group, who were beloved by the elementary schoolers, chose to betray that trust and relationship they'd built with the younger kids just to scare them into being nice to one girl. And though popular Queen Miura has no problem terrorizing her peers to keep them in line, I doubt she'd target kids on her own. And it's not just the teens. Hirosuke-sensei purposefully remained ignorant, knowing the types of ideas Hachiman would come up with, just so she didn't have to step in and do something. At the same time, there's other changes happening that wouldn't have under different circumstances, especially among our main players. Yui is discovering who she is, and becoming a person who can hold her own, all while easily moving between her old group of friends and her new one. She's actively trying to do what she can to rectify her past mistakes, and has become more sympathetic. Yukino has actually made a friend, mainly Yui, though she's becoming comfortable with Komachi as well. She's wanting to spend time with them, and is being helpful and kind to them, in her own way. Even with Hachiman, she's become quite comfortable just talking, regardless of who's around. And though there's a ton of bickering and harshness, she's also open and gentle with him at times, even agreeing with him, and not always begrudgingly. And then there's Hachiman. He didn't just try resetting his relationship with Yui in the last book. He tried resetting himself back to pre-Yui and Yukino's factory standard. But he couldn't. Oh, he's trying hard to believe he did, but he's failed. And despite being more on guard with Yui, he's definitely more comfortable around both of them, and is able to easily read them to know when to speak, and when to not, and when to simply act. When it comes to Yukino picking on him, which has increased a good bit in this book, he no longer withdraws or simply goes on the defensive. He teases back, straight up returns the verbal barrages she gives. And whereas before, he proudly bore the title of Ultimate Loner, he now actually looks at another human as a friend. No, not Yukino. Saika, the cutie pie. Hachiman even refers to Saika as his friend now. And though he considers all his other relationships to barely qualify as such, and can be terminated at any time with no repercussions, it's easy to see just how much it would hurt him. Along with the idea of circumstances changing people in ways they wouldn't otherwise change, making them act in ways they wouldn't otherwise act. This book heavily explores the idea of powerlessness. Anyone who's been powerless knows how truly terrifying and damaging it is. Though Wataru-san does a good job easing us into this spine-chilling feeling. He starts with something silly. Hachiman just wants to veg out and do nothing during his summer break, the one time he gets to go full loner mode and not have to deal with anyone other than his sister. But then Hirosuke-sensei messages him. Being a self-respecting kid on break, and a long-time loner, he ignores the message and turns off his phone, only to have Komachi come down from her studying and demand to be rewarded with him escorting her to Chiba. He doesn't want to, but who can say no to their younger siblings? Trust me, it's harder than you'd think. It's only after they reach the train station that Hachiman realizes he's been tricked by a coordinated effort from Hirosuke-sensei, Yukino, Yui, and his own sister. Neither is he given any choice in the matter but to join the group on the surprise 2-day camping trip. It's silly, but he is powerless in this situation. And as a loner, I can say from experience, being forced to camp with peers is the suckiest thing on the planet as a kid. Just remembering, Anyway, Hachiman makes the best of it, and Wataru-san moves on to less jovial examples of powerlessness. The girl being ostracized feels powerless in her situation, and from how she speaks later, it's obvious she felt powerless over the game of ostracizing the others in her class were doing even before her turn came up, leaving you to wonder just how many kids at the camp were struggling with this. The high schoolers feel powerless to make any sort of positive change. And it seems at least 2 of the popular group feel powerless over past actions that haunt them, that they're painfully reminded of. In particular, Hayama's helplessness over an unknown incident with Yukino is shown fairly well in how the popular king behaves toward her. And our trio feels powerless to actually fulfill this service club request. How often do we try ignoring or denying our powerlessness by saying things like, "That's too bad. I wish there was something I could do. Those poor dears. Well, there's nothing I can do." What's worse is when we think, "Oh, that's easy, I can fix or change that, no problem," without understanding the situation or what's maintaining it, both because it usually makes the situation worse and because failure leads us back to being powerless again. And it's not just on the part of the outsider. How often do we delude ourselves into thinking we can change our situation when we don't really understand it? As a kid, I was bullied and harassed every day. Seriously, I didn't get a break at church or hiding in my house on weekends as they'd call and bash me over the phone or leave cruel messages on the answering machine. And heaven forbid I play in my own backyard, because the ringleaders were my next-door neighbors. For years I was told by adults just to figure out what I was doing wrong and stop. So I tried. I changed everything about me I could think of, over and over, and nothing changed, because I didn't understand that it was nothing to do with me. I was just the convenient target. This isn't too dissimilar from some of the memories of Hachiman trying to change his situation, being friendly, trying to join in, only to be shunted. He didn't understand, so all his attempts were going to fail, which they did, forcing him to face his own powerlessness over and over until he gave up. I really enjoyed Wataru-san's final show of powerlessness. When the teens return, being dropped off at the school, Haruno, Yukino's sister, appears and overwhelms them with herself, because that's the persona she portrays. Yukino has no choice but to join Haruno. While this is going on, Hachiman, surrounded by people, realizes that it was Yukino's car that hit him. Unlike the calmer, more private situation of him and Komachi when he found out Yui was the dog owner, Hachiman has to process all of this, while surrounded by people and having been emotionally drained for the last 2 days. He can't say anything, he can't do anything. And when Yui tries asking about the car, he lies, saying there's a bunch of cars that look like that, and he doesn't really remember much anyway. It ends there, before Hachiman gets a chance to really mull this over. But I can't imagine him feeling anything but being trapped in that moment. A traumatic event that stole his last chance at making friends and having a normal high school experience just recently shook his little world he was finally feeling comfortable in and looking forward to. He was even speaking and interacting with Yukino on a more intimate and comfortable level than before, and now he finds she's been lying to him, both by omission and commission. Not once did she mention her involvement in the accident, and she treated him horribly and pretended she had no idea who he was. And it was off of these lies they'd formed a pretty solid relationship. If he says anything, it'll all shatter again, and he might not be able to get any of it back this time. But if he doesn't, it's already shattered for him. He's already lost that wonderful delusion he's been enjoying. Now he has to choose, again. Only this time he has 2 people he's really starting to care about to consider. When he reset his relationship with Yui, he didn't think it would change anything between the 2 girls, but now he knows better. He's seen firsthand. And this time all 3 of them would know that all of them were involved. Whereas before, Yukino stayed silent, so Hachiman and Yui could believe it was just between the 2 of them. By speaking, he's not just losing the comfortable relationship with Yukino, he's both starting to enjoy and getting more comfortable with, and able to handle. But he'd also cost Yukino and Yui their relationship. In turn, what little he and Yui were starting to build back would easily crumble with no foundation to support it. By maintaining the lie, at least Yui and Yukino can continue being friends. For this, Hachiman can keep pretending. Or can he? He's spent his life as a loner. He's always been alone, and the bigger the crowd, the more isolated he was. But does he really want to feel that way in the one place he kinda belonged, even if only for a moment? Can he even handle such a thing anymore? I can't wait to find out in the upcoming books. Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.